Hey y'all, how's everybody doing? Good? A little bit, it's that afternoon slump, so I wasn't expecting like a lot of cheers and woohoos. Maybe we'll save that for the food hall tonight. Just a thought. But I'm Amy O'Connor. I work at Jamf and serve on our communications team, and I'm excited to be here today to introduce this really cool topic that I'm looking forward to learning about too, and our speaker, Eric Henry, who's going to speak about engaging your deskless employees. Eric, to you.
All right, excellent. Hopefully the sugar, we ordered that candy for this afternoon so you guys get that little sugar rush boom thing in the afternoon. But let's go ahead and get started. Hopefully we can provide a little bit of value to you. Is that blank? Am I clicking? Oh, I'm clicking the wrong button. I probably should have learned how to use this thing. Play button, there we go. Yeah, all right. Okay, so I'm Eric Henry. I'm from Carousel Digital Signage. Happy to be with you here. It's been Everybody asks how many JNUCs. I think it's like 6 or 7 for me. And I'm just thankful to be here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about engaging your deskless employees. And so it's interesting. I got to see a study, an industry study. So we come from the digital signage world. And digital signage is like this made-up term for an industry that we're not really sure what to call things. And so that's just being honest. Like we've been around for 27 years. And we're like, what do we call these displays with these computers attached to them? How about digital signage? Well, there's lots of other things that are digital signage, but anyway, that's the industry we come from. So think about screens on walls with Apple TVs behind them or other devices behind them. And that is typically how we've moved into this new world of communicating with our employees. And the challenge with that, obviously, is if you're in a corporate environment, that's great. Like I'm walking by these screens, you may or may not be looking at them, but it came from a time when flat panels were new and cool and they weren't sure what to put on them. And we happened to be doing things on CRT monitors, and so we started putting digital signage on these displays. Awesome, super helpful. Well, now we're in kind of a new world where people are saying, interesting, we're finding that we're not able to engage these employees that are deskless. So ever since COVID time, we've had to really think about our tagline. I should pause for a second and say, our tagline when we got into COVID was for places where people gather. That was pretty tough. So we had to start thinking about, okay, how do we actually communicate with people in a new way on devices that maybe we hadn't communicated on before because nobody was going to an office anywhere or a school anywhere for a while. And so that started to get us to think about things like, can we communicate on screensavers and desktops and those types of things? And obviously everybody was remote at that point. And now we've emerged in this new world where we have a lot of frontline workers in a lot of places, and we have a lot of corporate campuses. People are returning to those, and we're thankful for that. But the challenge still remains. And so I actually saw a study, and this study was saying, boy, we're finding that people on the front lines, deskless workers, are not as engaged or informed or receiving the same information as people at corporate offices. Not a surprise to anyone. But the answer in this study, the suggestion of this study was a little bit surprising to me. So they said, well, so what you should do is be more strategic about where you place your screens. And I thought, that doesn't really help if I'm never coming to an office. Like that just seems to take the same approach and try to resolve the same problem. And so what we did is we stepped back and we said, okay, how do we actually engage our deskless employees and everybody else? And this is where we came up with our new tagline, which is a powerful signage solution for screens of all sizes. So why do we say screens of all sizes? Because obviously we're at JNUC, and we want to talk about, okay, how do we actually engage our employees across their iPhone, across their iPad, their Mac, and with Apple TV on a screen on a wall. So this idea that instead of thinking about digital signage, this little industry that was just kind of very niche and had a kind of a strange beginning, how do we actually step into a world where we're thinking much more about our employee communications campaigns like we think about marketing campaigns? And so I'm going to phrase this whole conversation like that today. In a marketing campaign, we all know there's a call to action. We actually track all the things. We think very strategically about where in the world am I going to place the content, and which audience am I going to target with this messaging so that I make sure that people actually get something that's relevant and pay attention to it and respond to it. And so if we start thinking about our employee communications in the same way, we realize that we don't really have a lot of great mechanisms to reach our people. We have a lot of tools, and this is what's interesting. I had an opportunity to go to Cupertino one time and stand in front of a bunch of people who were saying, boy, we can't engage our people at all, and we have 20 different communications mechanisms, and they don't read any of them, and then I'm telling you about number 21, right? Like, that's just being completely honest, like, that's the challenge. Okay, wait, Eric, we've already got Slack, Teams, fill in the blank. Like, how many different email, how many things do people not pay attention to? Plenty of them. Yet I'm going to propose to you that you need one more. So that's my proposal for today. With communicating with deskless workers, like, how can we possibly communicate with them in the same way that we communicate with people in the office? I mentioned with deskless workers, they often feel less connected because, again, they're out on the front lines. They don't have access to the same information. They don't even know who their peers are at the home office. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of those things today. I'm not very good at advancing my slides, I'm sorry. All right, so how does Carousel help this? And then we'll get into actually the nuts and bolts of things. So what we do is we focus on really giving you a set of content management tools to tailor your messaging. Again, thinking about how do we message our employees or give them a call to action that's highly relevant to them? How do we present core values? How do we celebrate successes, celebrate key sales wins? Or we have what we call a core values channel. We love celebrating company core values and people recognizing one another. How do we get that out and experience those all across the front lines? And so we help by doing that. Jamf helps by making it so that we can manage all these devices. That's why we're here at this conference, right? Talking about how do we successfully deploy and manage all of these devices. But then also, what's powerful about Carousel and Jamf together is we can target specific content to people's devices using Jamf Pro, Jamf School. It's pretty awesome. So that's how Jamf fits into this equation for us. And then what I would argue is, wouldn't it make sense to deliver all the most crucial information to all of your people across all their devices? And so what we allow you to do now with what we call Carousel Daily, looks like this, is the ability to take a piece of content, a message, a call to action, annual benefits enrollment. Let's take that as an example. Hey, I need to enroll in annual benefits, and I need to deliver that to a particular region of the country or a particular group of employees within the organization. I can put that on a wall in that region. I can also put it onto desktops in that region. I can put it onto iPhones and iPads, and I can use Jamf Pro to say, this is the feed, the audience that I'm marketing to, put it in what we call Carousel Daily, and put it in the widget so that they can click on it. And when they click on it, they can have a call to action that says, and here's exactly where you go to do the annual benefits enrollment. Here's another example of what that might look like on an iPad. And so again, with the widget, it's the few things that you can do. Now, how can we do this? Again, with Jamf Pro, you can target the feeds, but also with Carousel, what we do is so why am I proposing differently than Slack and Teams and all of the other tools you have that have their purpose? What we're basically doing is saying, let's cut through the noise and let's focus on the 2 or 3 things that you absolutely need to know. And that's the things that you would put in the widget. And so you could have 5 different feeds as an employee on the front lines, and it might be based on your region or what store you're at. I don't know what organization you come from, but you can think about the types of feeds you'd have as an employee. What's the corporate news? What's related to me as a region? What's general HR things? What's some celebratory things? And I can highlight the 2 or 3 things because every piece of content in Carousel has its own schedule. And so now, instead of sending out a newsletter that has a week's worth of things or 3 weeks worth of things, I can place things right in a feed that's relevant for that day or a call to action for that week, and I can schedule all of those things ahead of time. So now what I'm getting is, like, think about replacing a newsletter or a poster with real-time content that's delivered right to your phone or your tablet. And along with that, I'm actually having a very specific call to action. And so now I can go and have a call to action, and I can click on that piece of content, and it'll say, here's right where I go to do annual benefits enrollment, or complete your cybersecurity training. We need everybody to do it by Friday, right? It's Wednesday afternoon. I click on that, it brings me right to the cybersecurity training. Or for protected data, hey, here's sales metrics. Here's the link to the sales system. You still log into it so that you can see it on the back end, but you can call people to action. And so what I love about this is not only is it another tool, but it actually helps you leverage the value of the other tools you already have. Because sometimes we forget all of the things that we have access to, and I can click on a daily feed and go, oh yeah, that's right, that's where I go to find that piece of information, or that policy or procedure. Okay, click, and I go. Here's an example of kind of what that looks like as a screens of all sizes argument. So I might see it in the break room, I'm going to see it on my Mac, I'm going to see all of this content reinforced in several places, because we know with communications, again, back to this idea of more of a marketing style approach to employee communications, thinking about that, we know you need to see something typically, 7 times is what they say for it to be effective. And so if I see it on my phone, if I see it reinforced on digital signage, now it's starting to become much more potent. And so that's how we've really been thinking about it. And then really importantly, starting to measure team engagement. And so the thing that's a little bit challenging about this digital signage world that I was talking about is we invent this world, and then we say, boy, we can't actually prove our value. So what if we put cameras there and try to track how many eyeballs are walking in front of this screen? What if we do all, and so we started as an industry like making up all these ways to prove our value. And it turns out with Carousel Daily and Jamf, we can do some pretty cool things, like I can tell you how many people are subscribed to that feed, right? So in a managed environment, you decide, sorry, shouldn't have done that. In a managed environment, you decide how many feeds go on those devices, but you can also opt into feeds. You can scan a QR code and follow a feed, and you can see how many people are subscribed to those feeds, and then more importantly, you can see how many people are engaging that specific piece of content. So how many people in the app clicked on that thing about cybersecurity training or employee recognition thing or annual benefits enrollment. And so when we start thinking again back to this idea of much more around a marketing campaign idea, what are the things that we're communicating that are getting success? I could even say, hey, you should recognize a peer, and then put a link in there to bring them right to the place where they recognize a peer and encourage that from a culture perspective. And so that's a lot more about how we think about this whole idea of, again, engaging your deskless workers, because typically they still have a Mac, right? Or they got their phone in their pocket, or their iPad they're walking around with. And so the great thing is, it doesn't really matter. The only difference between them and a corporate office employee now becomes the screen on the wall might be the only one they're walking by that they don't see. Everything else is consistent and on brand and corporate wide, and they get the same experience and they get the same information. And so what we see at a lot of corporate customers in particular is this really strong desire to make sure that the deskless team, the frontline workers, feel connected to the home office, and not only connected, but also looking at the same information. So the same dashboarding reports, the same like messages from the CEO, the same videos, all of those types of things. And so that's why I would argue, again, against all of the other platforms that there are, yes, there are a lot of them, but most of them don't say, hey, let's pare it down to 2 or 3 things on a schedule and give you only the thing that you need right in front of you at any time. All right, switching gears for just a second, one of the other things that we do is emergency notifications. This is a thing that we're still developing within Carousel Daily, so specifically on these managed devices. With emergency notifications, how that's worked in the traditional digital signage world is I've got an Apple TV on a wall, or I've got 15 in a lobby, or however, if I got 100 stores, I might have 300 Apple TVs across those stores. If something happens in that building, a tornado drill, whatever, or even just taking over the screens for a takeover day, I take over all those Apple TVs and I display one piece of content. That whole concept we're bringing also to Carousel Daily, because again, you want people seeing the same things and it being very responsive. And so there's some really interesting things going forward that will continue to tie the ecosystem together. And that's why we love developing on the Apple platform along with Jamf, because it just allows you to do some really cool things. So as we're going forward, thinking about things like the power of in-app notifications, or the fact that we know where you are, right? That's super helpful, because if you imagine as a deskless worker, you might be across 3 stores. And so can I deliver content to you that's specific to the store you happen to be in? Like, we're starting to get really, really, really targeted in terms of the messages that we're delivering. And so that's conceptually where we're going. The next slide here is is more just my personal opinion that I will share with you today. It's very interesting how so often we say the phrase, the customer's always right. And I would argue that that's not correct. I would say that it's actually more important for you to take care of your employees because they're the ones, I say not customers always right, customers always come first, I should say that. I think I understand the sentiment behind that, but I would argue that your employees come first. Because employees cannot give to customers what they don't have. And so ultimately at the end of the day, like why do I care about engaging deskless workers? Because I care about the deskless worker. Right? Not because I want to try to sell you more digital signage or my Carousel product, but because I think it's super important for people to feel seen and valued and heard and like they're a part of your team. And ultimately that does lead to profits because if I have a team of people that know that I care about them and that I see them and I celebrate their accomplishments and all of those types of things, they will take care of our customers better. Like, why does all this stuff matter? Like, we talk about technology all day long, but what I get excited about is the idea that people, through technology, might actually feel a little more seen and a little more heard and a little more valued. And when they do that, they will value our customers and take care of our customers much more. Like, why does it matter that they're engaged? Well, it matters that they're engaged because if they're engaged, they will take care of people better than just being you've all interacted with people that have been discouraged in their job. It's not usually a great experience. And so, again, I want to kind of challenge you with that. I've got a few other slides that I don't know that are particularly helpful for this conversation, so I'm just going to kind of cruise through those, looking like disengaged employees. You've all seen that, burnout. And then this is kind of my argument. What happens if your employees did actually feel engaged and empowered? And I think it's sometimes maybe a little bit easy for us to think this doesn't matter quite as much as it does. And I will tell you that I get quite a bit of feedback about how much this really does matter when people feel that they're seen, that they have the same tools as their corporate office counterparts, that they're recognized for their efforts, that they're celebrated. And it doesn't take a lot, right? It doesn't take a lot. And so that's kind of what we're about. We love working with Jamf. We love working with Apple. This here is just kind of a outcomes argument, right? Like, I believe all of these are great outcomes for engaging your deskless employees, so why spend the time and why have the targeted effort at getting that to happen? I think you're going to just see a healthier culture. Like, at the end of the day, for us, why do we do what we do? Because we're trying to promote really healthy cultures within our organization, right? And perhaps that's why you're here today. So that's what I have for you, short and sweet. I would love to take questions or other things. Amy, if you want to coordinate that for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone have any questions they would like to kick off with? Otherwise, I will start with one. I have a question for you.
All right.
Can you give us an example of using this tool in the Carousel world? Like, do you use this with your employee base, I assume?
Yep, absolutely.
So can you talk about a little bit about the changes that you've seen internally for you? I mean, the expected outcomes, is this based on what you've seen before?
Yes, absolutely. So within our organization in particular, we use Carousel daily. There's a couple of things that we use it for, and then I would even highlight maybe a couple of surprises that as our team has used Carousel daily. So we like to use our own products and see how they work. One of the things that was definitely pretty awesome at first was Carousel daily very quickly became the place where everybody just went to find the stuff. And I was a little bit surprised by that because that's not really what we built it for. We built it for, hey, here's the 2 or 3 things. And then what we did was we gave it to each team and said, hey, everybody in the company should know how to use our product. And so it was interesting to watch the teams and see how they would use this tool to communicate with their team and to communicate with other teams in the organization. One of the things that we found that was most surprising was what happened between the teams. So not just within a team, but now other teams could see what other teams were doing because they would share their feeds. Like, you could go to subscribe to anybody else's feed. And other teams became, one of our core values, I should stop and say, is compassion. What I noticed between our teams is there was much more compassion between teams because there was more understanding. Oh, that's what your team is facing? Oh, here's a story. Oh, boy, that's a procedure? One team would post a procedure. hey, this is how we have to process midterm renewals. Oh, are you serious? And they saw that there was 27 steps in that process, and they created more compassion. It's very interesting. So like, those are a few of the things that I was surprised to see was actually across teams more connection.
That's really fantastic. From an internal comms lens, even at Jamf, and that's what I serve in, everybody struggles with that siloing, right? And lack of understanding. And it's not for a lack of wanting to know, but maybe not knowing where to look.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. That's
Absolutely.
really helpful. Anyone else for questions from our expert on employee engagement?
I don't know if I'm an expert on employee engagement, but I appreciate that.
I think you are.
This lights back here are crazy. I can't even tell if there's people. Like, so.
That's fair. No worries.
I was that clear. Nobody has any questions or anything.
Going once.
What?
Going twice.
I mean,
All right,
I'll hang out if you guys want to chat.
Yeah, you can always pop up and say hi. Plenty of time to do that. But thanks for joining.
All right, well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for coming.